Hello, I'm Elise Vance, the author of the channel Borrowed Lives, and I offer you fascinating stories. Like and subscribe to my channel.
For as long as I can remember, my elder sister, Victoria, made a habit of taking everything that belonged to me. Every time I started seeing a promising guy, she would swoop in with her flawless charm, orchestrate a dramatic misunderstanding, and walk away with him. By the time she stole her seventh partner from me, a timid architect named Daniel, something inside me finally snapped. I decided it was time to teach her a lesson she would never forget. Victoria was a rising commercial model, drop-dead gorgeous, vain, and obsessed with status. I created an anonymous profile on an exclusive networking application using high-definition photos of Victoria that I took during her photo shoots. But instead of contacting ordinary men, I targeted someone on the far end of the spectrum, Julian. He was a 31-year-old venture capitalist with a towering 6 feet 3 inches frame, a sharp, striking jawline, and a reputation for being dangerously possessive. More importantly, he possessed endless wealth. When Julian fell for the profile, he didn't just communicate, he engulfed my entire world. Though we only interacted through encrypted calls and messages, he treated me like his sole priority. The moment I casually mentioned being stressed at my software design firm, custom meals from Michelin star restaurants arrived at my office desk with strictly enforced delivery confirmations. He transferred six-figure sums into an offshore account just so I would never have to worry about rent or bills. On our 4-month anniversary, he sent me a photograph of an antique, solid iron padlock resting on his mahogany desk, accompanied by a brief message: "If you ever attempt to walk away from me, little bird, I will build a cage you can never escape." That chilling warning was precisely what I was banking on. That exact evening, I sent him a cold, final text severing all ties, wiped my temporary device, and blocked his line completely. My plan was simple: unleash a controlling, obsessive billionaire onto Victoria and let her deal with the fallout. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at an upscale bistro in downtown Chicago, watching Victoria flirt aggressively with my latest interest, an engineer named Julian, or rather, Eric, a quiet guy I'd been seeing for a month. Out of nowhere, the heavy glass doors of the bistro swung open. Julian walked in. I always anticipated Julian would hunt down the face on that screen, but I never expected him to track her down so rapidly. We resided in completely different regions of the country. Aside from Victoria's real face and legal name, every piece of background information I had fed him was a complete fiction. Seeing him step into the room in person made my pulse hammer against my ribs. The pictures hadn't captured his intense, commanding presence. He didn't even cast a glance in my direction. His dark eyes coldly scanned the room until they locked onto Victoria, who was currently leaning against Eric's shoulder. Julian glided straight past the tables, stepping directly between Victoria and Eric. His posture was rigid, his expression unreadable. "Is this person occupying your time?" Julian asked, his voice low and smooth like velvet over steel. Compared to Julian, Eric looked like a ghost. Victoria's eyes instantly sparkled with ambition. Without a second thought, she shoved Eric aside, discarding weeks of effort she had spent stealing him from me. "Absolutely not," Victoria replied effortlessly, casting a fake, sweet look toward me. "He's actually my younger sister's date. They were having a small disagreement, and I was merely keeping him company, wasn't I, Elena?" She signaled for me to step in, expecting me to clear the floor for her new target, exactly as she always did. The cold severity in Julian's eyes softened the moment she spoke those words. A slight, dangerous smile touched his lips as he stared down at her without blinking. I stared down at my lap, digging my fingernails into my palms until it hurt. Wasn't this the exact scenario I had scripted? With a hyper-possessive billionaire focusing all his energy on Victoria, she would never target my partners again. I could finally live a quiet, normal life. I was supposed to feel victorious. Instead, my mind kept drifting back to the 4 months of late-night conversations, 4 months of feeling like the center of someone's universe. Whenever I worked late on software launches and forgot to eat, Julian would track my location, order feasts to my building, and demand video proof that I had taken a break. He shared every trivial detail of his day with me. When he discovered I admired discipline, he spent 2 hours every evening at his private gym, sending me videos of his workout routines just to make me smile. Even through a digital screen, the intensity in his gaze had been real. Realizing that all that devotion was now being transferred to Victoria made a bitter ache settle deep in my chest. Julian didn't notice me at all. His focus remained entirely fixed on Victoria. His voice was quiet, with a subtle, dangerous edge underneath. "If he isn't your partner, then perhaps the position is open for me?" Victoria tilted her head, shooting me a glance of pure triumph. Her expression practically screamed, "Everyone wants me, no one wants you." She paused just long enough to appear sophisticated before giving a slow nod. "That depends entirely on how well you treat me." Julian let out a low chuckle. "You will find yourself more than satisfied." My knuckles turned white around my napkin. I couldn't bring myself to look up. My own mind punished me by replaying the quiet promises he used to whisper through the receiver at midnight. "Don't ever walk away from me, little bird. A world without you isn't worth breathing in. If you run, I will search every corner of this earth until I bring you back." I had to admit it to myself, I had fallen for him. Nobody had ever made me feel like I was the center of their existence before. But that was precisely why I had fled. Men with that level of dark obsession never let go once they lock onto a target. Except the image he had locked onto was Victoria's. All those long nights, the woman in his mind was my sister. If I kept participating in this game, I was the only one who would end up destroyed. On our 4-month mark, Julian had told me he was flying down to see me in person. "I have my private jet ready," he had said. "The moment I land, we are signing the papers. My legal team is already transferring 50% of my tech holdings and real estate into your name to guarantee your security before the wedding." He was ready to give me everything. The more he offered, the heavier my guilt became. None of it belonged to me. So I cut the cord, sent that harsh message, and vanished. "Elena." Victoria's voice broke through my thoughts. "Julian is taking me out for dinner at the Skyline Lounge. You should join us." I knew her motive instantly. She wanted an audience to showcase her wealthy, breathtaking new trophy. The sensible choice was to go back to my apartment. Joining them would only fuel her ego and tear me apart. I went anyway. At the restaurant, Victoria began ordering lavish platters of raw oysters and king crab. Julian paused, giving her a strange, sharp look. "I was under the impression you hated raw seafood. You told me the smell made you ill." Victoria froze with the leather menu in her hand. She shot me a quick, calculating look before regaining her composure. "Well, don't you enjoy it?" She took a gamble, and it paid off. Julian's face softened. I should have known my girl would remember my favorite dishes. I sat there with my head bowed, feeling like a ghost at their table. I stayed completely silent until Victoria asked the waiter for a large portion of mango tart for dessert. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Julian had a severe, life-threatening allergy to mangoes. Knowing him, if his partner ordered it, he would view it as a test of loyalty and eat the entire thing with a smile. It could literally kill him. The words burst out of me before I could stop myself. "You can't order that." Julian's head snapped in my direction. His dark eyes turned icy cold, filled with sharp annoyance and a sudden layer of suspicion. I scrambled to cover my slip. "I mean, you've already ordered enough appetizers. I want to swap the dessert for strawberry shortcake." I detested strawberry shortcake almost as much as I hated sitting at that table. I silently swore to myself that this was the final time I would intervene. Whatever happened between them from now on was no longer my concern. After that evening, I buried myself in my work at the software firm, working 16-hour days to purge Julian from my system. Then, late one Thursday night, as I walked out of the corporate building, I saw him leaning against a sleek black sedan. My feet froze. I checked my watch, past 10 p.m. He pushed off the vehicle and walked directly toward me. "Julian? What are you doing here?" His next words sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Does Victoria have any close acquaintances? Someone who would have constant access to her personal devices?" He paused, his eyes narrowing. She doesn't feel like the woman I spoke to for 4 months. For a fraction of a second, a spark of hope flared in my chest, only to be crushed by reality. So he had realized Victoria wasn't the right girl. What difference did it make? He only cared about me because he believed I possessed her face. Since arriving in the city, he hadn't shown an ounce of interest in the real me. I forced a confused smile. Really? I thought you two were a perfect match. Julian stared at me for a long, heavy moment. I'm thirsty. Take me up to your apartment for a glass of water. He didn't wait for my permission. He simply walked toward the lobby doors. Knowing how relentless he was, I knew arguing was pointless. But the second I unlocked my apartment door, my stomach dropped into an abyss. Sitting on the entryway console, right beside my keys, was the old, scratched secondary phone I had used to catfish him. After the breakup, I couldn't bring myself to wipe the device. I had even removed the passcode because I only used it at home, a decision that suddenly felt like the biggest mistake of my life. When the silence in my apartment got too heavy, I'd turn it on just to reread our old chat logs. It contained all his workout clips and late-night messages. I was so far gone that a photo of him from the gym was still set as the wallpaper. I lunged for the console. Julian had longer strides and lightning-fast instincts. He clicked his tongue softly. Leaving a secondary device right out in the open? There must be a few secrets stored on here. Is it yours or Victoria's? He snatched it off the table, holding it far out of my reach. His thumb hovered right over the power button. It was over. In a matter of seconds, he was going to discover that the person he had poured his soul out to for 4 months wasn't Victoria at all. It was me. I heard the tiny click as his thumb pressed down. Just before his eyes could hit the screen, raw panic took over. I let out a sharp cry and threw myself straight at him, reaching up as high as I could to grab the device. I didn't care how desperate or unhinged I appeared. His free arms swept around my waist, catching me effortlessly before I collided with the floor. We both went completely rigid. I could see the internal struggle flashing through his eyes. His immediate reflex was clearly to drop any unfamiliar person who touched him, but after a tense second, he let out a slow exhale and set my feet down gently. Even so, he kept the phone held high above his head. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. He caught me. My mind raced back to a voice call months ago when I had heard a glass shatter and a woman shriek on his end. Julian had explained in a detached, emotionless tone that a female client had staged a fall just to land in his arms. Because he was distracted listening to me speak, her hand had caught his sleeve before he shoved her away. He had thrown that designer suit straight into the trash the moment he returned to his penthouse, swearing that no other woman would ever touch him. Yet he had just caught me. Did that mean I was an exception? Before I could process the thought, his deep voice vibrated above my head, amused yet razor-sharp. Why are you panicking so much, Elena? Now I'm genuinely curious about what you're hiding. He raised the phone higher and pressed the power key again. I couldn't reach it, even on my tiptoes. I squeezed my eyes shut and braced for the inevitable explosion. Then I heard him mutter under his breath, "Why isn't this turning on?" I opened one eye. A completely black, lifeless display. Dead battery. Then it hit me. I had stayed up until 2 a.m. the previous night replaying his old video messages and forgot to plug it in. Julian leaned down, his face inches from mine. "Elena, what are you keeping from me?" I managed to find my voice, forcing a cool, detached tone. "What does it matter? I'm not Victoria, so nothing on my personal phone has anything to do with you." His jaw tightened slightly, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Fair enough. You have nothing to do with me. I'm leaving." The moment the heavy door clicked shut behind him, my knees gave out completely, and I slid down against the wall onto the cold hardwood floor. The entryway still held the faint trace of sandalwood, the signature cologne I had selected for him online. Before meeting me digitally, he had never worn cologne at all. Afterward, he wore it daily just to show he listened. He used to tell me through the phone that one day he would hold me so closely the scent would sink directly into my skin. None of that meant anything now. Sitting on the floor, I made a strict promise to myself: stay far away from him. We live in two completely different worlds. It's officially over. I was lying to myself. It was far from over. Over would have meant Julian returned to Victoria's side. Victoria remained bound to the controlling nightmare I had designed for her, and I finally found a quiet, normal partner who wouldn't abandon me by the time dessert arrived. Instead, 3 days later, Julian appeared right outside my software firm's main entrance holding a paper coffee cup, his calm, intimidating gaze locked squarely on me. I immediately turned toward the secondary emergency exit. He was already leaning against the side brick wall, looking like a high-fashion model in a tailored coat. "Do you stalk women as a profession, or am I just a special client?" I snapped, stopping in my tracks. "You walk considerably faster when you're carrying guilt," he replied smoothly. "I walk faster when strange men memorize my office exits." He held out the paper cup. "No mango. Just espresso." My hand twitched toward it before my brain could process the movement. Nobody puts mango in espresso anyway. A faint smile touched his lips. "There she is." I froze. "It's funny," Julian continued softly, stepping closer. "Victoria told me yesterday that she absolutely adores mango tarts. But you claimed mangoes could kill me." "Because they can," I stepped backward, my heart pounding. Julian had the subtlety of a dark storm in a three-piece suit. He asked questions like a prosecutor, looked breathtaking, and somehow made every single detail my responsibility. "Victoria doesn't recognize my cologne," he said, taking another step forward. "She claimed I smelled like expensive smoke." "Sandalwood," I muttered under my breath, instantly hating myself for letting it slip. "She doesn't know why I started working out twice a day," he continued, his dark eyes lighting up slightly before returning to a cool, intense focus. "She doesn't know what name you gave my very first gym video." "I told you that you needed better hobbies," I countered quietly. His gaze flickered with satisfaction. "You keep providing answers when you should be denying everything. Then stop asking me questions." "Victoria is hosting an exclusive dinner party this Friday," Julian said, changing tactics smoothly. "She wants the local press and our circles to see us together." "Congratulations. You will be attending," he stated, leaving no room for argument. "No. If you don't show up, Victoria gets to control the narrative entirely on her own." "So you're inviting me to sit there and watch my sister parade you around like a prized possession?" "I'm inviting you to step out from behind whatever elaborate lie you constructed," Julian replied calmly. "I didn't construct anything." "Then come and watch it crumble." He turned and walked away without waiting for a response, leaving me standing in the cool evening air. At home that night, I opened a hidden, encrypted folder on my laptop titled Utilities. Shame always chooses the most boring names. Inside was an exact digital log of every financial transfer Julian had ever sent, dates, exact sums, what I spent, what remained untouched, and my detailed repayment schedule. Breakfast for the mornings I skipped meals due to work stress, rent coverage when my firm cut hours, professional attire after my briefcase broke, gifts sitting unopened in their original shipping boxes, money I had once pretended was simple revenge, only to end up despising myself for retaining it. I wasn't proud of my choices. But if remorse came with digital spreadsheets, mine was organized by category. I had created this entire mess using high-speed Wi-Fi, petty resentment, and another woman's polished facial features. Victoria had stolen 7 partners from me using staged tears, manipulated screenshots, fabricated loyalty tests, and gentle lies whispered at just the right moments. By the time she took Eric, something inside me had fractured beyond repair. If Victoria wanted a deep, consuming obsession, I was going to hand her the ultimate corporate-grade version. Then Julian had started asking whether I had eaten lunch. Then he began sending ridiculous workout videos just to hear me laugh over the phone. Then he called after intense board meetings, letting me calm him down while I described the absurdly ugly office chairs in my firm's break room. Somewhere between revenge and late-night voice calls, I had stopped viewing him as a weapon. I needed to confess everything to him before Victoria discovered the truth. Naturally, Victoria got there first. On Friday afternoon, her social media broadcast reached my device via 3 separate group chats. "Some girls simply can't accept when a man chooses true elegance," read her caption above a photo of Julian's hand resting on the back of her velvet chair at a high-end club. The final slide showed a private reservation notification, Friday evening, Skyline Lounge. Inner circle only. Victoria smiled in the photograph like an heiress who had just acquired a rare asset at an auction. Eric sent me a text shortly after. Are you actually going tonight? Victoria mentioned you might cause a scene. Eric sounded like a man who had accidentally walked onto the set of a thriller he barely understood. I hadn't even grieved losing him, which spoke volumes about our brief relationship. Then, an unknown number sent a single character, K, Julian. I typed back, no. His reply came instantly. If you allow her to define your character, she wins. I threw my phone onto the sofa. It landed directly beside the dead secondary device, looking like a physical display of courtroom evidence. Friday evening arrived with the atmosphere of a root canal. Victoria had chosen an ultra-exclusive rooftop lounge with low lighting, gold-accented seating, and enough mirrors for her to admire her reflection from any angle. She wore an emerald dress, naturally. Victoria always wore bold jewel tones when she wanted to dominate a room. She always smiled as if truth were merely a rumor she could outdress. Julian stood beside her in a sharp dark suit, perfectly calm and completely unreadable. She kept lightly touching his sleeve. He permitted the gesture, but he never leaned in toward her. That lack of warmth was irritating her, I could tell by the tight line of her jaw. Eric stood near the bar, looking deeply uncomfortable about being demoted from a stolen prize to background decoration. Several of my former dates were present as well. Victoria had labeled the gathering an intimate dinner, but it resembled a museum exhibit, Elena's failed relationship history, curated by Victoria. I hadn't planned to expose her tonight. I had planned to survive the evening. The exposure ended up being part of the table service. Victoria spotted me arriving and brightened fake enthusiastically. Elena, you actually showed up. I was convinced you'd hide at home. I seriously considered claiming a medical emergency, I replied evenly. Her smile flickered. Always resorting to humor when the truth feels a bit too harsh. A few acquaintances offered awkward laughs before catching themselves. I looked at her with the exact sugary sweetness she used to direct at me. That's a remarkably bold statement for a table hosting this many shared exes. Someone at the corner table choked on their drink. Julian's lip twitched slightly. Victoria laughed too loudly. See? Elena just can't be happy for other people. Which people? I asked smoothly. You tend to rewrite the narrative depending on who is sitting across from you. The entire table fell completely silent. Even the waiter serving the appetizers looked uncomfortable. Victoria recovered quickly, leaning toward Julian. Darling, tell everyone how we first met. I almost swallowed my tongue. Julian leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Online. Victoria waited, her smile straining when he offered nothing more. He's a bit private about romance, she added quickly. Julian was never private about romance. Julian once sent a voice note at 3:12 a.m. saying he dreamed I left him for a guy in boat shoes and woke up so offended he ordered 3 tailored suits. Victoria would never know that. Julian set his glass down. Let's play a game. Victoria blinked. A game? You enjoy games, don't you? She laughed nervously. Of course. Victoria possessed the supreme confidence of a woman who believed consequences were only for people without designer outfits. Julian turned to her. What was the very first meal you made me promise to eat? Victoria smiled smoothly. Steak. My fingers tightened around my napkin. Julian nodded once. Steak. Wrong. The word landed clean and sharp. Her smile froze completely. He turned his gaze toward me. What was it, Elena? Don't ask me, I murmured, staring at my plate. Oatmeal with. I closed my eyes. Banana and honey. Because you skipped breakfast and claimed coffee was a complete meal. Julian's lips curved faintly. There she is. Every eye at the table shifted to me. Victoria let out a sharp, forced laugh. She obviously heard that from me. For someone who claims to know your soul, she probably skimmed my chats. For someone who claims to know my soul, I said aloud before I could stop myself, you couldn't even remember he's lethally allergic to mangoes. The table went dead silent again. Julian looked at Victoria as if she were a simple math problem solved incorrectly. He pressed on. What cologne did you choose for me? Victoria answered hastily. Something custom. I forgot the brand. Sandalwood, I whispered. His dark eyes deepened. What did you call my first workout video? My face burned. Illegal. Full sentence, Elena. I said you looked like a hostage trying to seduce his captor, I confessed, my eyes fixed on the tablecloth. The table erupted into sudden laughter before anyone could stop themselves. Even Eric covered his mouth. Victoria's face flushed bright red. Enough. This is ridiculous. Elena stalks people. She probably accessed my devices. Julian finally turned his full focus onto her. Your devices? Which messages did you and I ever exchange? Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Julian placed his primary phone on the table, then reached into his coat and pulled out my old, scratched secondary phone. You charged it, I breathed, my lungs emptying. I bought 3 different cables before one worked, Julian stated calmly. He turned the screen toward the table. His workout photo lit up the room. The messages are all here. The videos, the notes about my meals, my allergy, my cologne. The night I nearly fired half my management team, and she calmed me down by making me describe ugly office chairs. An exact spreadsheet of every transfer and what it was used for. Julian's voice remained low and steady. The face in the photos was yours, Victoria. The woman behind them was never you. Victoria stood up abruptly, her chair scraping back. She catfished you. She used my image. Yes, I stood up slowly, facing the room. I used her photos. I lied about my identity. But the person who worried when you didn't sleep, who selected your cologne, who stopped you from eating mangoes, that was me. I opened my bag and placed a printed folder on the table. I started this out of spite because Victoria systematically stole 7 partners from me. Here are the cropped screenshots she used to manipulate Daniel, the fake loyalty tests she staged, and the messages she sent behind my back. One by one, my exes stared at the documents, the realization dawning on them. Eric dropped the page he was holding, looking at Victoria with absolute disdain before turning and walking out of the lounge. 2 other former dates followed him immediately. Victoria looked around the table, realizing her hold over everyone had completely shattered. Julian stood up, picking up my old secondary phone and placing it gently in my hands. This belongs to you. He looked at Victoria one last time. I do not want a mannequin with the right face. I want the woman who remembered what could kill me. He walked toward the exit, not with Victoria, and not with me. I followed him out onto the terrace. Were you ever going to forgive me? Julian turned to face me in the cool night air. Your lie was real, Elena. But I came looking for a face. I stayed because you knew how I took my coffee. We start over. Slowly. No fake accounts, no money transfers, no dramatic declarations. Just the truth. I looked at him, feeling the heavy burden of months of deception finally lift. Chocolate lava cake, I said softly. That's my real favorite dessert. Julian's jaw relaxed, a genuine, rare smile breaking across his face. Then let's start with that.